Good morning, fourth graders. Today is Monday, March 23rd. This is Miss Ferguson. I am posting a video for you today as a short lesson because obviously we are not together to have ELA, but I still want you to be working on the things you need to be working on as a fourth grader at home. So today we are going to be talking about theme. I know that you have done this before with me, and we've focused on other skills lately, so I wanted to go back to theme because it's such an important part of ELA, especially in fourth grade. So we're going to be doing a little PowerPoint, and then afterwards, your responsibility at home is going to be to do a writing assignment for me based on this and put the skills we're working on into practice. So let's start talking about theme. So, what is theme? I know that you know that we have a chart paper poster in the classroom, and we've talked about this quite a few times. Theme can be very tricky, not just for fourth graders, but even sometimes for grown-ups when we're reading. Theme is something that a lot of people struggle with at times, and a lot of people mix up theme with main idea and subject. And we're going to talk a little more about that and how to make sure that we are finding theme and not finding the main idea or the subject of whatever we're reading. So, the theme is a central idea or the message of a story. It is what the author wants us to know. It's usually hidden, so it's not something that we can always find easily. We've always said in class that reading is thinking, and this is definitely a big part of that. Reading is something that we have to do and practice and think about constantly. And even though authors often give us a lot of information, authors also want us as readers to practice finding information on our own and thinking about what we're reading as we're doing it. Usually, the reader, so you, needs to infer the theme. Think about what we've said about inferring or making an inference. We've talked about how an inference is an educated guess using the information we have. Sometimes things aren't stated directly to us, and it's our job to find out what the theme is or how someone's feeling or whatever it may be that we're trying to infer. You think about what we've been reading in class with divided loyalties, we have to frequently infer how a character is feeling based on their actions or based on the things they say, even if they don't come right out and say how they're feeling. After reading a story or a book, the reader, you, should consider the overall message that the author was trying to convey or show through the book. So after you're reading, and even though we say afterwards, during it, you should still be thinking about what you're reading. The overall message is what the author is trying to show you. What lesson is the author trying to teach you by writing that story? I'm sure we all remember the tale of Little Red Riding Hood, something that we've all heard many times. I remember reading this a lot or hearing it told to me as a child myself. And let's use this as an easy example, and I say easy because so many people know it, of what is the theme? What is the theme of Little Red Riding Hood? When this story was written, what was the author trying to convey to us? So the theme of Little Red Riding Hood is, think about this for a second. Little Red Riding Hood, the young girl, she was traveling through the woods and she was going to her grandmother's house. And as you know, it turned out very differently. When she thought she was seeing her grandma, she was actually seeing the wolf, and she was fooled by that. Appearances can be deceiving. Even though she thought she was seeing her grandma and she thought she was talking to her grandma, she was actually being tricked. So, appearances, how something looks, can be deceiving. When something is deceiving, it's tricking us. So, sometimes things aren't what we think they are. One really important part of theme is that we have to have text evidence. I cannot tell you if your theme is right or wrong because the theme could be different from person to person. But if you have text evidence to back up what you state the theme is, then you can prove it and you are correct. The wolf seemed kind. He seemed nice. So Little Red Riding Hood trusted him. She told the wolf where her grandmother lived. Then the devious, so the tricky, conniving wolf tricked Little Red Riding Hood by sneaking into her grandmother's house and disguising himself as her grandmother. I'm going to read you a short story. I know with part of this with the screen capture that I'm using, part of it might be cut off at the bottom or the side, and I apologize about that. Technology isn't always perfect, but I will read it out loud. So make sure you're listening and following along as best you can. Dan, why don't you get started on that science project tonight? Mom said. Mom, it's not even due for 2 more weeks. I have plenty of time to finish it, Dan replied as he sat on the couch watching TV. But if you get it done now, you won't have to worry about it, Mom reminded him. Don't worry, Mom, I'll get it done, Dan answered. 1 week later, the project was still unfinished. When Dan's mom reminded him to get started on the project, he promised to start it on the next day. The next day, however, Dan became sick with a severe case of the flu. He spent the next 3 days in bed. He finally felt better the day before the science project was due. At 9:30 p.m., Dan put the finishing touches on his project. However, he still had to write a report. Ugh, he groaned. I have learned my lesson, Mom. I will never do this again. What do you think the message is with this story? What do you think the author is trying to teach us or convey to us by writing this short passage? Think about that for just a second. So, the theme of that passage about Dan and his mom is when you're given a task, especially one that's time consuming, you need to finish it as soon as possible. Procrastinating is never a good idea. And sometimes if we leave things to the last minute, unexpected things come up and then we don't get to finish what we need to finish. You should always keep in mind that a book's theme can be worded in different ways. And again, it's something that can be different from person to person. And as long as you have text evidence, then it would prove what your theme is. My evidence for this story is that Dan had many opportunities to do his project, but he kept putting it off until a later date. Then something unexpected occurred. He got sick and he had to scramble to complete the project at the last minute. We're going to read another short passage and we're going to determine the theme. So you are following along and listening, and you are thinking about what it is that the author would be trying to teach us by writing this passage. Your grandparents called and said they are going to visit tonight, said April and Ashley's dad at dinner time. Let's wait to have dessert until they arrive. We can have some cookies. April groaned. I don't want to wait. I want my dessert now. Well, if you choose to have your dessert now, you won't get any when your grandparents arrive, her dad said. I know, April replied. She went to the cupboard and helped herself to 2 cookies. I'll wait for Grandpa and Grandma, said Ashley. When the girls' grandparents arrived an hour later, they announced that they wanted to take the girls to the nearby ice cream shop for a treat. They knew the girls loved going there. Ashley hasn't had her dessert yet, so she can go. April already had her dessert for the night, though. She'll get to stay home with me, their dad explained. April sadly watched out the window as Ashley and her grandparents left for the ice cream shop. What do you think the lesson is here? The theme of this story is be patient. What is my evidence? April was not willing to wait to eat her dessert. And because of that, she missed out on an even better opportunity that presented itself. Because she didn't want to wait and she chose to eat her cookies, she missed out on going to get ice cream with her grandma and grandpa. A book's theme can be supported at various or different points throughout the book. A theme usually needs to be inferred. So the theme is usually, and we say that because that's not always true, a theme usually needs to be inferred. It's not always something that is explicitly stated. A lot of times, like I said, it's something that we need to think about. The author wants us to do the work. So they provide the information in the story, but as the reader, we are the ones that are supposed to think and figure out what that theme is. Different readers might interpret the theme in different ways. We could read the same story and I might find a different theme than you might. But if we both have text evidence to back that up, then we would both be right in our own way. This is a really good question. Can a book have more than one theme? Yes. Chapter books, especially because they're longer, often, excuse me, chapter books especially can have more than one theme. We're going to read another short passage and we're going to practice finding the theme. So you are listening and you are thinking about what the author is trying to teach us or show us with this passage. Easton, we decided to cancel our trip to Disneyland in June. We're going to use that money to fly to Oklahoma and help your grandparents right away. A tornado had ripped their house apart just yesterday. Easton was shocked. He didn't know what to say. He understood that they should go help his grandparents. In fact, he wanted to go help. But it didn't seem fair that he should be forced to give up his trip to Disney World. He had dreamed about this trip for years, and his parents had finally purchased the airplane tickets. Who knew how long he'd have to wait for this opportunity again? Easton felt angry for the next 24 hours, not at his parents, but at the situation. It was so unfair. However, that feeling of anger melted away when he arrived at his grandparents' town and saw the devastation caused by the tornado. Suddenly, he realized that he had a lot to be thankful for. First and foremost, his grandparents were unharmed, and that was the most important thing. What do you think the theme of that story is? Be thankful for what you have. The safety of the people that you love is the most important thing. It's certainly something that is much more important than going on a trip, even if it's a trip we really wanted to take. And we should always help other people when they need us. We talk every day about showing sisterhood, and even if it's not one of our friends at school, we should always be trying to help someone else if they need us. Follow along with this next passage, and as you can probably guess, you are practicing finding the theme. Wyatt and his parents were at the restaurant, waiting for their meals to be delivered. As they waited, Wyatt's dad was pointing out the 10 things he had done wrong during the football game that afternoon. Wyatt always dreaded this post-game ritual, where his dad, a retired professional football player, listed everything he did wrong during the game. In fact, Wyatt's dad was so focused on pointing out Wyatt's mistakes that he didn't immediately notice that a boy and his father had approached the table. "I'm sorry to interrupt your meal, but I was wondering if I could have your autograph," the boy asked Wyatt's father. "Of course, buddy," Wyatt's dad replied kindly. "What would you like me to sign?" As the boy handed Wyatt's dad his baseball cap, the boy's father went on and on about what a gifted football player his son was and how proud he was of his son. Boy, Wyatt thought to himself, That kid is so lucky. It must be nice to have a father who thinks you're great.